Welcome. What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul here with the Comic Book Conservation Live Show.
Coast to coast.
That's true. And maybe continent to continent.
Yeah, tonight there, yeah.
We're coming to you live from an undisclosed location in the Texas Hill Country. And I'm joined as ever by Captain Larry of Flying L Comics. Say hi, Larry.
Hi, Larry. No, I am currently in Moorbach, Germany. It's let's see, it's 2:36 in the morning.
Wow.
So I love you guys.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us so early.
Sure.
And the youngest, most esteemed member of our cast, Phil from Phantom Restoration. Say hi, Phil.
Hey, everybody. Coming from Queens, New York.
Representing the Big Apple. Look, we've got already Mike, Hugo Danner in the house, Shelby, and I have been playing phone tag today.
They're all
Peter,
checking on.
Don, what's up, y'all? We should have a fun show today, not super long. We're going to have two main segments, and we're going to start off with the fair market value conserve comics segment. And then we're going to have a review of one of Larry's recent unboxings.
Yay!
Actually, this one's super exciting. Not only is it a conservation project, it's restoration removal as well. So
it is.
I'm really looking forward to that. And I think before we get started, I'm just going to take a moment and I'm going to plug our comic book conservation community.
Nice.
This is our Facebook group where we collaborate. If you enjoy this show and you want more conservation, restoration, removal, a little bit of clean and press basics, but mostly, more advanced stuff, come check us out. The only rules are that you are sincere in your interest and you're collaborative and not mean. I throw people out if they're mean. It is indeed growing quickly, and we're welcoming new guests every week, so come check it out. Hey, Sean, welcome to the show. Without further ado, I think I'm going to jump into our first segment. Unless y'all have anything else you want to talk about before we get started.
No, I want to get right into this one. I love this book.
Yeah.
What about Free Comic Book Day?
What's that?
Did you guys make it out?
No, I'm in Germany, man.
They don't have that there? I thought it was worldwide.
They don't have that here. No.
Giving away the comics for free? We don't do this.
No, I'm in a small village too, so there's no comic shop here.
I made it out. Actually, I got all the targets that I wanted except the relaunch of Popeye. They were all out by the time I made it out. As you know, I live out in the country a little ways. By the time I made it into the city, it was a little later, and I probably should have asked them to hold one for me. But
did you go down to San Antonio?
I did not do that. I got caught up in other stuff today, and I thought we had talked about me going down. And I actually they have Steve Rude down there, doing painting live all day. And I actually thought, as cool as it'd be to see Steve Rude, I have interacted with him a little bit, and I have a sketch from him and some other things. I actually wanted to spend time with the shop owner and with Bill Field, and I thought they're going to be completely consumed with the Steve guest appearance. And it's probably just, it's like an 8-hour, round trip for me. And I thought, what, I'm going to do it when I can actually spend some more time with those guys. So.
As a city person, admittedly, I get it's ironic. I get overwhelmed, and I most of the time, most years, I just end up staying in. And some of the specific books I want, I'll just buy them online. And I'm like, I didn't have to go to the crowd. I didn't have to, I didn't have to fight for it. And I can get it.
I think all travel is relative. If you're used to driving an hour every day, then it just, isn't a big deal. And if you're used to not driving very much, 20 minutes can seem like, whoa, I better pack a lunch, It's all relative, right? Ben asked if I've been going to Free Comic Book Day for 40 years. I have not. I do remember the first one. I guess it's been around about 20 years now, or a little over that. We didn't have it. It wasn't a phenomenon when I started. It's approximately as old as CGC, if I remember correctly. But I remember the very first ones, and I remember the first couple. I was taking my daughters to them, and I was like, tell them that you want one of everything, right? And I was dragging 2 girls through so that I could get 3 copies of everything there.
Incredible.
And then, of course, telling them, you can't touch that. You haven't washed your hands.
That's Daddy's.
Just kidding. All right, well, let's get started with this book. If anybody has a line on that Popeye relaunch, let me know. That's the end of Free Comic Book Day conversation. So we've been doing this segment. Again, I do it partially because I'm really fascinated by it. We also do it partially because if you're interested in conserving books, you should know what the fair market value of the book is likely to be when you're done with it. It's not a hard science, but that's why we do this segment, just to give data points. And if you're going to put 40 hours of work into something, you better know whether or not, you're likely to get some kind of a return on it. Or if it's worth less when you're done, it would be sad, right? Maybe it'd still be fine because maybe you're doing right by the book. But so we have these 2 books. The one on the right is a conserved, they're both Captain America comics, number 37. The one on the right is a conserved 6.5 that sold at auction this week. The one on the left, exact same grade, sold about 8 months ago. So we're going to go through both of these. That's about as good as it gets usually for Golden Age books with census counts this low. If you can get 2 that sell within a year, that's a pretty darn good.
No, 8 months is good.
Yeah. All right. So first up, why do we care? Captain America Comics, number 37, April 1944. Height of the war in terms of the content for the comic books. This one has Nazis. It's got Cap. It's got Bucky. It's got grenades, rocket launchers, machine guns. It's got the Red Skull on the interior. It's a Schomburg cover, if I remember correctly, and it's really stunning. Median grade is only a 4.0 on 70 universal copies, 9 restored, 4 qualified, 1 conserved copy. So this is what I'm saying. Like when that one sells, we have to pay attention and catch the fair market value and see where it's at. But 70, this is, the timelies, which is what Marvel was called back in the day. The timelies tend to have lower census counts than the DCs from the same era. Not quite half, I don't think, but something like 2/3-ish, depending on the title. And so they do tend to sell for more in general than the DCs of the same era, depending on title and content, of course. But the top selling timely books from that era have a higher fair market value than the best DC books from the same era, all other things being equal. We're going to go through the universal one first. So this is an interesting book. It's a 6.5. It presents pretty well. It clearly isn't a higher grade book when you see it here. There's some yellowing, there's some staining. We'll look at the greater notes.
The juxtaposition of like the wholesome like candy bar ad with the grandma giving the kids next to like the this with
next to this
everything but the kitchen sink thrown in. It is very
insane Schomburg cover.
Yeah.
I mean, these Schomburg covers are so busy, and I think that's part of what people like about them, but they're also definitely so busy.
Oh yeah.
So in the graders notes here, I think this is an interesting book. So page quality is off-white. That's quite nice. You'll notice it's from the Bobby Blue collection. Now, CGC has pedigrees, and we've talked about those a bit. It's a relatively new phenomenon that they have collections. And this Bobby Blue collection was actually brought to market by the Flip Mode guys out of California, if anybody followed this story. And they got a label from CGC denoting the Bobby Blue collection. It is not a pedigree, but it had quite a few high quality, very difficult to find books, including a Sensation 1 and a few other real heavy hitting highlights. And so it was awarded the collection denotation. I personally don't think that generally carries much weight in terms of a premium, but it may have in this instance because there was almost a complete cap run there was a huge run, high grade caps in this collection. Yeah. And, some of the collections, like, I don't know, provenance matters only when it matters, right? Like, for example, books that used to belong to Nick Cage have previously from Nick Cage collection.
Exactly.
I think there are people that would pay a premium for that. I would pay a premium for that, for example. Yeah. But not sure about this. We'll talk about it more when we see what it's sold for. In terms of the Grader Notes stapled detached front cover, that's probably the rate limiter right there.
I think
With
so.
A stapled detached,
100%.
It's tough to get much more than a 6.5. It had light foxing, light creasing to cover. If the staple's still attached, I think it's more like a 7.5. I think that the staple was what kept it here at the 6.5. Nice book nonetheless. And again, I do really like the off-white page quality.
Yep. Is this a single staple book? I think it is.
It is. Is it?
It should be, but based on the year.
Detached. Yeah. Maybe, because it does say staple detached. It doesn't say lower staple or upper staple detached.
Just for anyone watching too, that might be kind of confusing. So when you're looking at a staple too, you really have two different sides. So you can have one side of the staple detached and have the other side still attached. So it can say that, but the cover is still technically attached. It's just one side of it. It's part of the
like a paper flap that's still pinned in there is kind of what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. The real question is how strong it's still attached. That's important to many people.
Yep. So what did it sell for? Look at that.
That's actually about right. It's a lot of money.
20 grand. So there were sales above and below this. There was so GPA actually rounded this down a little bit. Rather, Go Collect rounded the fair market value down a little bit because there was a 7 that sold for 20 grand. And there was a 6 that sold for about, it's failing me right now. Maybe it was 15. But I actually think this number is correct because the 7 and the 6 both had poor paper quality, much lower than this one. And I think that affected the grade. And I don't think Go Collect's algorithm accounts for that. So rather than using the Go Collect algorithm value for fair market value, I think we should use this hammer number right here. Yeah, like the others had cream or tan paper, I think that pulled them down. Yeah, it must be nice.
Yeah.
What's 20 grand among friends, Mike?
Yeah.
This is what I was talking about. There aren't like a comparable DC in a 6.5. This isn't a major key. They're selling for $1,000, $1,500. This is a lot more money. I do think this is a very strong sale. It might have had something to do with all of the Bobby Blue collection books coming to auction at once and people like the whales coming out and trying to grab some of these timely Captain America comics issues, because there was not a full run, but there was a good uninterrupted run of at least a dozen books, and they were all, this is actually probably one of the lower graded ones. They were all very nice. All right, so that's our high water mark, just under 20 grand. Here's the book that sold this week. In many ways, it presents better. The back is cleaner and nicer looking. The front is cleaner and nicer looking. It does have a tear in the upper left corner by that round circle with cap in it, the yellow circle with cap
It's kind of
standing there.
binary, but yeah, technically it's there.
Yeah, and when we look at the grader's notes, it's actually really a similar book to the others. So 6.5 off-white to white, so slightly higher paper quality than the off-white. Conserved, obviously. Conservation includes tear seals, cover and interior, cover reinforced. Typical stuff. Grader's notes indicate detached centerfold.
Love to see that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it in a minute, guys.
Yep.
Tear top of back cover, light multiple crease left center of front cover, spine reinforced, tear seals left top front cover conserved, tear seals right bottom page 1/4 conserved, very light subscription crease front cover. I am bewildered.
Yeah, I am too on this one.
Why bother doing the conservation and not fixing the centerfold, not fixing these tears, and you do those things, and this is probably a 7 or a 7.5.
So, well, here I'm thinking what we discussed, last week was
Similarly.
just
What are you thinking, Larry?
maybe they're just kind of being conservative, didn't want to put too much into it and risk that purple label. But I'm puzzled. Yes, I wouldn't have stopped there. Yeah, so I'm confused on this one.
I think I know. It's one of, I think, two things. I think that it's either they wanted to be conservative, or it's possible that what they used to reinforce the centerfold was such a small amount that they thought it would hold, but upon being graded, just being handled for the grader to check, is the centerfold attached? By them checking, they detached it, and then this maybe wasn't intentional, and whoever submitted this said, "Oh man, I should have put a little bit of mending tissue in there to do it."
Well,
maybe.
the
We'll never know.
the person grading this level of book is one of their senior most graders. Matt may even graded that one himself, but it's not going to be one of your junior graders, manhandling this book.
That's true.
Yeah.
So,
but that is a reasonable explanation. But the reason I'm thinking they just left some meat on the bone is because they also left this tear top of back cover.
yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I would have sealed it up.
Just
Yeah.
don't. So if
It
you
could be
were
a
the one to
budget,
conserve
too.
this book, let us
They have
know.
work done on
What are we
it.
missing?
They could have had the work done on a budget, and that could also be it too, where the person said, "Hey, I recommend having this done," and the person said, "No, just we'll do this, and that's enough, and I'm fine with the grade." They realized maybe the difference.
Any money spent there, you're going to get back fivefold, though.
Well, I don't think my OCD would allow it to leave my hands without being fixed.
Same.
So I think they left some meat on the bone here, but let's see what the hammer dropped at.
Okay.
Still a chunk of change.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of change still.
So again, this was this week, 10.8. Based on the other one selling for 20 grand, I think this was, and the fact that there's meat on the bone here to be picked off yet. 10.8 actually seems low to me.
Well, this is a heritage auction. What was the other auction? The Universal
Comic Connect.
It was Comic Connect. So, somebody may have, they may have paid a lot of money. This is a lot of money for the conserve book. I'm pleased.
Oh, 11 grand's a lot of cheese, no matter how you slice it.
It's 50% of the other one, so it's still good.
Yeah,
55%. So
okay,
I think, like I said, I think that there was meat left on the bone here, and I think somebody got a pretty good copy of Captain America Comics 37 for a really nice price. As I said, I think it presents better than the $20,000 one, and it still has a few things you can fix.
Can you go back to the image of the conserved copy again? And I have a question for both of you, actually.
Yeah, what's up?
I wanted to see the greater notes again. So it was tear seals to cover reinforced. So what would you guys think this book, if you were to remove the conservation, would give this book as a universal grade?
Oh, okay.
Playing that game, yeah. Just to ask that question.
Well, the thing is, you got the spine reinforced is usually the tough one. It's just like, what's the extent? I've taken covers and completely rejoined 2 split halves and got a conserved grade. So if you removed it, we don't know the condition of the actual cover. Is it hanging by threads? Is it in pieces? Does it have a 4-inch split? All of those would come into play. Yeah, we'd have to know the actual real details of that. The tear seals, I would definitely do the front cover. It depends on how big these tears are. Is it a flap? Was it crunched? I mean, there's so many variables in here, but I think the big one would be the reinforced spine.
I think it would be a range, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking I do think the work they did brought it up a lot.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
2 tears plus it probably was it was probably a loose cover. Why else did they reinforce the spine, right? So you're going to have a loose cover plus 2 tears in the cover that they fixed. That's putting it at 5.
I'm curious. Let's say the cover's the best case scenario. The cover's detached. There really isn't a lot of splitting at the spine. You submit this in, it gets a 3, 5, or a 4 universal grade. I'm
thinking 4.
10.
You think
at
that
10
low?
grand? Well, the cover it maxes out once the cover's detached, but the rest of the cover is in perfect shape. I don't think you can get above a 4 or 5 or 4. Yeah. I never really seen even above a 4. I want to say, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I think they top out at 4 with a detached cover.
This has a detached cover and it's a 6.5.
That's a detached centerfold.
Yeah, different. That's a different deal.
No.
Yeah.
Read it. Stapled detached front cover.
But just one side of it. So in this case, it would be. I think because that's such a severe defect, this would probably be an 8 if that defect wasn't there, or maybe higher. But if the whole staple was detached, this would be capped out at a 4. Let's say.
I'm not following you. I read this to say stapled detached front cover. So when you're saying front, you're making
still attached on the back cover.
Yeah, the staple is detached, not the cover wrap detached. It's just the staple. The staple is hanging there.
It's almost like popped on one side. Yeah, that was the distinction I was saying earlier.
That's what I'm picturing too.
Okay.
Popped on one side.
Yeah.
But I agree with Phil. I think what they probably did was they may have. I don't know. Actually,
I think what they did was the right call. I am just curious, like what a 4.0 universal would go for, and I bet it would be just under what this price was, maybe 8 grand. So it was still worth it to get the work done. It was just a curious
I would think
case.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was the right call. I think they just didn't take it far enough. It seems like to me. Of course, it's easy for us. This is Monday quarterbacking, right? This is easy for us to sit back. We didn't do the work. We didn't have the book. So again, if you worked on this book, reach out to us. Let us know what was going on. And maybe the answer is, no, you guys are right. I just
I think they just went
right.
I think they may have been conservative. Yeah, I think they just went conservative on this.
Yeah,
and didn't repair everything.
So
it presents really well, though.
It's a beautiful book. That's what I'm saying.
I'd love to have it.
Oh man. So again, just in conclusion, not sure how much of a premium was paid for the Bobby Blue collection. Seems like probably that's a strong sale at 20 grand for that book. And I think also it was a well-bought book. The conserved copy was well bought at just about half of the price of the universal. So there you have it.
$10,000 because someone went in and did some conservation work to reattach a cover. It is a objectively kind of a crazy thing, but we also can understand the desire to want the original untouched one.
Oh yeah,
for 10,000 more. It's a whole nother book. it's kind of
it is.
So that is that. Let's talk about
There it is.
Let's talk about Haunted Thrills number 18. This crazy cover. I would love to say that we timed this perfectly so that it was during Derby week, but
That's right. I forgot that was Derby week.
well, let's just take credit for it. Let's say we did that.
Okay. Well, what attracted to me to this book was the skull cover.
It's a great skull cover.
I love this cover. Any of the skull covers are great for the pre-code horrors.
Absolutely.
His eyes look like shining diamonds, like glistening inside.
Oh, yeah.
It's very cool.
Obviously, pre-code horror, Ajax, November 1954, and as I mentioned before, we've got some restoration removal on this one. So this one's, to me, really excited. Where did you pick this one up, Larry?
This was, I don't remember. I think it was an eBay.
And the color touch was disclosed, so you knew what you were getting into, or you found it?
It was not disclosed.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was a surprise. I've gotten a few surprises.
Bad surprise.
Yeah, those are always bad. I've got a run of bad surprises recently.
How did you work it out with the seller when you discovered that it was color touched?
Because I didn't know it was color touched until I because it was very well done. Okay. I mean, it really was. And it wasn't until I started cleaning the cover, and I'd had it in the pile for probably over a month at that point. Mm-hmm. So I didn't, even on quick examination when I first got it, you did not see the color touch.
Yeah, sure.
So, but they did a really good job. And the best part about it, it didn't bleed through to the inside of the cover. Right. As once it does that, then you're hitting it with the knife and just cutting the pieces out, which I hate doing.
Absolutely. So in terms of rarity, obviously there's a lot of interest in pre-code horror. It's one of the hottest segments of comic book collecting right now. Mm-hmm. This is a pretty rare book. The Universal 35 examples, that's lower than most of the big EC books. 0 signature, not surprising, but none restored, none qualified, none conserved. I didn't put the median grade here, but it looks like it's probably the 3, maybe a 3.5, but probably the 3. So
I think that's a fair grab.
Yeah. The book is a rare book, and it is especially difficult in grade. Like the highest in census is a 7.0. That tells you something.
Yeah, I actually got a glimpse of the 7.0. I should have sent you a picture of it. Wow. It's a pretty book.
I'm sure. Really is. I mean, the one that you worked on is a nice looking book. Fair market value here, I just grabbed from the bottom to the top. The last sale that I thought was salient was there's a 4.0 that sold for $850 in the last year. There was a 3.5 that sold for a little over $650 in the last year. And somewhat of possibly an outlier, there was a 3.0 Universal that sold for $700 in the last year.
Well, I was just looking, and I just found my purchase on it. Mm-hmm. I purchased it back in early February, and I paid $631 for it.
Okay, and so you're buying it right in this range.
Book. Yeah,
you're buying it right in this range of approximately a 3.0, 3.5.
Yeah, I know. I thought I got a pretty good deal until I saw the color touch.
We'll see. Yeah. We'll see how it turned out.
Yeah.
I have some before and afters from you that I've assembled here. So obviously there's some spine roll to correct and some yellow paper to correct.
Yes, there is.
Do you want to walk us through generally how this presented and the big picture?
you
your
can
process?
tell almost immediately that that lower staple is detached.
Mhm.
So that's an easy fix. So I looked at that and I knew it had to be re-rolled. Just looking on the corner pieces, that lower that bottom corner right there, it was a little bit tattered, and we just needed to reinforce that. But as you know, when I do my work, I separate all the wraps and they are completely flat when I reassemble everything. So that makes
Right.
the re-roll a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this one, it actually came out fairly well.
So disassembled and every
Yeah.
page cleaned, deacidified,
hmm Including
pressed
the
before
cover.
reassembly. So this is
Including
where
the
you
cover.
had some color touch. And when we look at the top image, we can see some dark spots. And one of the things I've said about color touch ink is that it looks muddy. And it just
Yeah.
does. It looks a little muddy.
I just didn't catch this at first glance. I was just so excited to have the book, and I did. I do recall I consulted with both of you when I discovered the color touch and to get your opinions on it.
I'm curious now to see how this turned out because as far as I remember, the last time I saw that bottom image was me saying, Larry, I think that there might still be some color touch on there. I could be wrong, but my gut just looking at something looks a little off. But then we also agreed too that the production level on books like this at this time, this while it could look odd, it also kind of looks fine. So it was like a weird.
When removing the color
ground.
touch, removing that color touch, it came off surprisingly easy. I think when it got its aqueous bath, that was like the loosening of everything, and then it just some of it wiped away. The rest of it, I just kind of went ahead and just removed it, with a white eraser. And that's why you see some of the rub through there. But there was most definitely color touch.
So in terms of what you did here, this was removed with an eraser primarily and then washed, or was it washed first and then erased? What was your process?
It was washed first, and that's when I actually discovered the color touches in the washing, because then it really showed. And so I went, okay, let's get back in my lane. And I just went ahead the rest of the process and pressed everything flat, did my normal treatments to it, and then approached the color touch to remove it.
And the wash here was pretty much your standard use.
The standard wash.
The base is 25% saturated calcium hydroxide, and then to that you add just a very
1%.
tiny amount, like essentially 1% hydrogen peroxide, and a couple drops of the Tritenex 100 as well.
All correct.
Yep.
For anyone watching,
and probably 3 rinses of about 5 minutes, something like that.
Also correct.
The first one has the surfactant. The next 2 rinse it out. So no Tritenex 100 in rinses 2 and 3.
The 2 and 3 are just calcium hydroxide.
So one of the things I wanted to point out here is that you also have a little bit of color loss, like in the black below the T bar.
Yes.
And in that field to the right of the D. They show up here under magnification, sort of large image, but they're really, well, we'll get to it. Actually, I want to,
so
I'll bring this back up again, but
okay.
It really is not as severe as it looks here. In fact, it still looks better than the before when all is said and done. But here's the inside of that same place where the color touch was.
Correct. So it cleaned up very nicely, actually.
It did.
And it did not penetrate into the interior cover. So that was another reason I didn't see it right off the bat. First thing I do is I pull the cover open and look for the ink spots where
bleed
somebody
through.
touched
Sure.
Yeah, because it always bleeds through, no matter what. So,
I think it depends on what kind of pens you're using, is really ultimately whether or not it's going to bleed.
Yeah.
So this turned out really nicely. Obviously, everything we just said that applies because this is attached, right? This
Yep.
is just the back of the page we just talked about. Blue lights on these at all, Larry? Or
Yes, always.
all
Yep,
blue light as well?
Yeah, I always hit it with the blue light to lighten it up, but it retained its creamy color, which is what I was after.
Yeah, it's nice.
Less is more.
This black looks like it's lost a little bit of intensity, but I'm actually not 100% sure that isn't autocorrect from the camera.
Could be.
I think it's a little bit of loss, but still pretty good. There was a little tear that you had to fix as well.
Yep. So that was just a normal run-of-the-mill cover tear. So yeah, that was just Japanese paper, and that was a really quick fix. What's hard is when you don't have the paper. But this one still had it. It was just dangling there, so it was just folded into place.
Nice.
Fix it. There's all the wraps.
Everything together.
So
beautiful. Really nice color on the paper, I think.
Yeah, I really like that creamy color.
Yeah. It just kind of connotes a nice patina and age and warmth that, the really bleached paper doesn't. The other thing of note here is, at arm's length, the inks look phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. They really popped.
Yep. And obviously you reinforced that staple.
I did.
Was it just the one or both?
I don't remember, but if I were to guess at it, I would say I reinforced both since I had it apart. Generally, what I do is I check the cover. It's really got to be a good, strong cover, which most of them are not. So I'll reinforce the inside of the cover, and then I'll go to the center wrap, and on the back side of that, I will reinforce just those staple holes as well, because that's where the pull through and the fall apart usually happens.
Yeah.
So it makes it for a nice tight book after that.
There's no penalty for that. The book's already conserved.
Exactly.
There's
too much.
There's no penalty for doing that, and you're just sort of putting the book in its best foot forward.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. I've never reinforced just one staple. If I'm already there doing one, it's
Yeah,
like
that-
my OCD
yeah,
too.
if
I'm
you-
like, just
If
do
you're
the other
committed
one.
to one, you might as well take care of both.
Yeah.
It's another minute or two and another little piece of mending tissue.
So, in summary, restoration removal, spiral reversal, conservation of rips, reinforce the cover, off to CGC. What were you thinking when you sent this off, Larry?
I put in complete notes, which pretty much everything you just read off, and I even told them I did the removal, and
Oh, okay.
I said, look, this is what I ended up with. I removed the color touch and showed them. The fact they even got the before and after pictures, the close-ups that we just showed. I put those in the notes, and go ahead. Next slide.
I just wanted to show this left and right. So this is where I said I'm
before
going
and
to come
after.
back to this. On the upper right, when we saw in close-up, there were some light splotches underneath the T-bar, some loss of color flecking in the blue field.
Are
But
these
when you
photos
see this at
in,
arm's
like, blinking light?
length, oh,
What's
I'm not,
that?
Are these
No.
photos like under light or are they scans?
They're
Just in terms
under
of the
light.
color.
they're
They're-
light,
Gotcha.
but,
Okay.
but
Gotcha.
front
So
light,
that
right?
Yeah,
that is the compensation for the color difference. That explains a lot. So
yeah, they're both under the same light.
gotcha.
I have a photo booth that I put the books into. That's what that gray background is on them. So it's the same
Gotcha.
light, same distance.
Okay.
So what I wanted to point out here is that even though under magnification it looked like, oh man, you lost something, at arm's length it just presents so much better, so much more intense with the blue, and it's because the yellows are gone. They're cleaned up with the wash. The forehead of the skull is brighter, the teeth are brighter, and everything just looks so much nicer in this finished product. And again, this isn't a trick of the light. This is the exact same studio lighting.
Literally identical
against-
lights.
Yeah, and this is the this is the standard gray board that the camera uses to normalize, right? So when you see that, I left the little gray gutter on both so that you can see there's been no tampering with the image.
Mm-hmm.
It looks a lot better.
Yep.
And grade 4.0 conserved. Congratulations, Larry.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, beautiful job.
I was happy with it. I always get excited when I see the conserved, because that's what I was after, and no purple.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
So
awesome.
you recovered
Thank
from basically a restoration that wasn't disclosed, and I think
Correct.
basically recovered your equity in the book.
Yep.
Is my
I
is my
think so.
estimation
Yeah,
here.
I got my equity back in the book. I had to. So I would call this a break even.
Yeah.
So,
But sometimes that's your best outcome.
Mhm.
Once not everything goes your way, right? I know
Not-
people. This is
not always.
I mean, sometimes you get a couple $100 book in the dollar bin. It happens, and you're elated, right? Sometimes something goes against you, and you end up with a book. You end up either with a scammer or some kind of an honest mistake, or even you make a mistake and you tape pull the front of your Iron Man #1, which I did once. That's my. I actually left the tape with the chunk of the cover on it, and it's still on the Mylar, just to remind myself.
So you did that to remind yourself, didn't you?
No, I
Never
did
forget.
it. I mean, I did it obviously accidentally. I did it over 20 years
man.
ago now, but I still have that chunk of the cover on the tape. On the
I was in my LCS a couple of years back, and a guy brought in a Fantastic Four #1 that he was trying to sell, and he wanted to show it to the owner. And why?
I have anxiety just with the start of this story, Larry.
Why do people put tape on the back of the bags? So he pulls it out and slides it out, and what's the tape do? Right onto the cover, and it just pulled it off, and it was just like, it was sickening.
That's a gut punch.
Oh yeah, I couldn't believe it, and I was just like, it made you want to cry.
Wow.
So we've all had our
Paul,
mistakes.
we share the Iron Man. I had my first book was a TOS 39. I got big book. I got for $555 when I was 13 years old. Worked the whole summer. My dad got it.
Oh, he's so much smarter than I am. He's so much smarter than I am.
Like a year after I had it, I was like, oh, I want to read it. So I pulled it out, washed my hands, put it on my desk. I carefully opened it all up. I go to put it back in the Mylar, and I didn't put a backing board under it first. And as I slid it in the Mylar, the open Mylar, there was a tear on the back cover that was already there that it caught.
Snagged it?
And it snagged the tear. And I took it about an inch and a half down, and my heart stopped. I dropped the book. My hands were profusely sweating. And I said, wait to live and learn. I never ever put a book back in without a board after that.
It's the only my
Just
copy
like
of Iron Man 1 is the only book I've ever tape pulled the cover of. I guess I should knock on.
You learned it.
It
caused you to learn the lesson.
Yeah,
yeah. It was an expensive lesson.
Well, it's actually it's not a super high grade. I paid $90 for it quite a while ago. Like I said, 20 years ago. But yeah, it's still a hit. So just for the sake of being complete here, conservation includes tear seals to cover, bottom staple reinforced, cover cleaned. Greater notes include bottom staple reinforced, cover cleaned, heavy creasing to cover, light foxing to cover, moderate spine stress lines to cover, tear seals, left bottom back cover, conserved. Beautiful job, Larry. Congratulations on this one.
Yeah, and I got the off-white to white pages, so I was happy about that as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question about the cover clean notation?
Sure.
In your experience submitting books, so I know that you mentioned whenever you clean a cover, that means by process you're cleaning every page of the book too.
Correct.
So within the nuance of grading too, it's harder for CGC to see how the pages have been cleaned, the interior pages. So like in this case, while they were cleaned, it wasn't notated. And I'm assuming in other cases too, like I've cleaned covers and they've come back having not been marked as clean, which is very rare, but it can happen.
Yeah, I've had that too, but I have never had any, and I've gotten actually quite a few back now that are conserved, that stay cover cleaned, and nothing has ever been said about the pages, not once.
Interesting.
So, because and it also probably has to the technique of it, and the fact that when I expose it to blue light, I have a blue light chamber where I clean the entire book. All the wraps are exposed at the same level at the same time, evenly, and I think that makes a huge difference. So all the pages look alike.
Yeah.
So you've got a bunch of stuff coming up, Larry.
Yeah, actually, the dark mysteries you're looking at, we're going to talk about that one next week.
We're going to talk about that one next week. And all of these, we're basically doing a summary of your whole process and a reveal. But you've got series for all of these, either already dropped or upcoming on your channel, where people can watch step by step what you did.
Yeah, the dark mysteries, I'm holding that one until we talk about it next week. It's a teaser, people.
That'll be fun.
I saw Nicholas ask this question. How?
We got a couple questions
by looking. Honestly, Nicholas, the answer is to specifically answer your question. It isn't really by looking; it's by feel.
No.
And often, in most cases, it's covers that have been cleaned have a different feel. Like you can close your eyes and you can feel if you know what you're feeling for a cover that's been cleaned versus a cover that hasn't, because the water affects the sizing and the texture and the what's it called? Sorry, my brain's failing me here. It's late at night.
The card.
The especially books like from this time period, they have a clay coating that gets affected by the wash, even if the cover is resized after the wash. So it's
the clay comes out.
Yeah.
Also, in this instance, Captain Larry sent him a note saying I washed it.
I did. Yep.
So so I think we have a couple other questions. This one I think we should talk about. Ben says, can you suggest a scale-up strategy from working on Golden Age books like this, starting with how does one get comparable low-value books to work on safely? Golden Age books that are not popular superhero books, especially in low grade, are pretty inexpensive. Go out and get you some detective books or some
I got one better
Westerns, all kind of stuff published in that era.
Go out and pick up some of your old Woody Woodpecker, some of that vintage sad sack. They are all over they're all over the eBay. You can pick them up very cheaply. Westerns. That Western books, that caters to a very small crowd. So they're usually
these were some of the very first books I did work on. I mean, Don Winslow, it's not an expensive book, but it's an old book, so you can feel comfortable working on the book, paper from the 40s, or Lone Ranger. These are not expensive books.
Those are perfect books. That's what you want to practice with.
You're going to be able to find those in the $40 a piece kind of range, and sometimes even cheaper if you're patient, and just buy some and start working on them. And what I suggest is watch some of the content out there. Obviously watch the instructional videos on this channel, watch the videos on Larry's channel. There are other great ones. We've mentioned them before. Subscribe to all of us on Instagram, including also subscribe to Kenny Sanderson on Instagram, and then just start tackling some books and give it a try. And I would suggest just tackle a single problem on a book. So
Yeah.
if a book has 3 or 4 problems, don't worry about the others. Just focus on one at a time and see if you can get that one sorted out. And when you get proficient at it, then add in dealing with additional issues. And I think that'll serve you well in terms of a process. Yeah. Shelby has a couple of horror stories here, it looks like. Lone Ranger 1 on a resealable bag.
Those resealable bags are horrible.
Don't
Yeah.
use them.
I hate those
Real
things.
bad.
He's
Yeah.
got 2 though. Flash Gordon 1 resealable bag, tore a strip off the back cover.
Yep. That's what happens. That's why we don't do this.
Yeah.
Worst invention ever for comic book collectors.
I mean, it's super convenient. The modern collectors love them.
Yeah.
But man,
Not me.
I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Ben, here with similar paper and ink. So maybe you can elaborate.
Ben, I think you might be overthinking this. Like, I think, like, if you're grabbing a Lone Ranger book from the 40s, it's going to have the same inks as the Batman books from the 40s. Like, there might be a slight change, but overall, the processes that you're going to do will be safe for that, like it will be for the other book. There's not going to be anything drastically different inherent in the paper for you to have to think about doing the process differently. It's not going to.
Yep. And if we're off base on that answer, just elaborate for us, Ben. Don says, what about Silver Age books? I'll start off. Silver Age books are much more difficult to conserve than Golden Age.
They're very challenging, yes.
They're temperamental. The paper's not as high quality and as thick. The inks were not applied as well or as thick. And I don't think the sizing is quite as good either. So you need to be very careful with the Silver Age books. The good news is there's even more inexpensive low-grade Silver Age material out there to practice on. So get some and practice a lot. Because one of the things that I have found is the Silver Age books are highly variable. You will feel like, oh, I did exactly the same thing 10 times. It worked great. And the 11th time, I got a disastrous outcome. And I hate as a scientist to say, well, that's just it. You know, they're variable. I want to think that there's some difference that I'm not paying attention to, or there's some difference in the history of what this book has experienced that made the outcome different. And I don't know always what that is, but so there's still work to be done. But guys, why don't you elaborate? I know you both have plenty of experience.
I was going to just comment that the Silver Age books, yes, the paper quality is definitely a lower quality, but the sizing comes out of the paper much more readily on these Silver Age books. And when that happens, that's when you're going to get all that ink loss. It comes off in flakes. Mm-hmm. And
And you just can't always predict when it'll happen.
I would say two things. Yeah. I mean, Paul, you made a really good point there that I don't want to lose, and that is sometimes it's something that was already inherent in the paper, and it's something where imagine the terror. You know, you're doing this professionally, and you've worked on a lot of examples of books, but you better have run across an example of the problem that you might encounter before you encounter it, and that's easier said than done. So it's like, remember the first time I gave a book a wash, a standard solvent wash that I'll do that is non-invasive, it's non-restorative, and it never affects the colors. And one time I pulled the book out and I was looking at the colors and I was like, I guess in an area the blacks were diminished, and I couldn't understand why until I realized the book had prior water damage. Yeah. Right there. And I was like, how did I not realize that before? You need to now know going forward, anytime you do this, that area of the paper is compromised in a way. Yep. Like the surface area is not protected. So you can't just jump in and do this and assume this is okay now. You have to really pay attention for all these things.
Yeah, I have a perfect example, actually. If you go to my channel and go like my very first video, it's I took just a horrible 2.0 Daredevil, cracked it out of its case. It was horribly damaged with water already, and I cleaned it. But you could also see a perfect example of of color loss. because back
Mhm.
then I didn't know what I was doing. I was still in that learning curve, and I haven't even seen Dr. Paul's videos yet, which totally changed the way I do everything. But I did have color loss. It was a Daredevil. Yeah, it was a Daredevil 8 for Stilt Man.
Yeah.
I've got stacks
I
of
love
these
that book.
books.
That's actually one
Well,
of that is the very first Silver Age book I
well,
traded somebody for it. It's the very first Silver Age book I ever owned.
I've always been playing speculator on that. If he's ever going to show up in a Daredevil movie, I've got a dozen of these things.
Do you?
sitting.
I had a couple of extras, but I had a pal over and we were trying to put together a trade, and he said, "What about First Stiltman?" I said, "Take it. That's my extra anyway." So I'm back to just my original copy.
I keep upgrading. I've got a few of them that are slabbed. I've got a 9.4. That's my highest graded
Ooh,
one.
nice.
Oh, nice.
So I'm trying looking for that 9.6.
One other thing I wanted to say before I forgot too, in terms of the Silver Age books specifically, it is interesting how sometimes if you have something like a foreign substance where you're looking at the book at an angle and you can see there's something sitting on top of the surface of the paper that if you take a cotton pad, you can carefully you can wipe it off without impacting the colors. But it's interesting how sometimes I do this professionally. I can go in and feel very confident, but I'll still do a slight spot test, and it doesn't seem to have any consistency whatsoever among publisher, whatever it is. But some books from the 60s, you go to do that, and the colors are fine. Other times you go to do that, and the colors are not, like, they're more volatile, and it's
They just will lift with a dry cotton round.
Only the area where what you're removing is on the surface of. Otherwise, you'll run into a lot of trouble. So it's one of those, you can't be cavalier going into really anything with these at all. You have to expect those kind of things, because that one rub in an area with all black, people, I
think the number one quality for success in this hobby is actually just patience.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
Yeah.
You just have to be patient, because you can't cut corners with these books, even when you're very experienced. I think I wanted to mention one last thing here about prior water damage. I still have. I got very inexpensively an ASM 15 because it had water damage to the cover, like bad condensation, like someone put a Coke bottle on it and let it sit there and sweat all summer. And so there was some color bleed and loss. And this was before I had really dug deep into the conservation literature. And I actually reached out to Rick Morgan and I said, "What do you think of this?" And he said, "If it has previous water damage, don't wet clean it. Don't do any water on it if it's already been damaged with water." And I think we talk about how this sizing is hydrophobic, and it actually, is a barrier to water entry. That's why when you just throw water over a comic book cover,
it doesn't uptake.
It doesn't absorb immediately. One of the reasons we use a surfactant, one of the reasons we use warm water, is because those will help it absorb quickly and overcome the hydrophobicity of the sizing. I don't know the full mechanism or why, and I'm sure it matters what the inks were and how long the water was there and whatever, but I think previous water damage disrupts that hydrophobicity. And when you wet the page afterward, you're already, it's like a 30-second wash is the equivalent of like a 10-minute wash already in terms of loss of inks.
Yeah.
So that is one that you can try to avoid and be mindful of. I have an example of an Avengers 1. There's a whole series that I did late last year on my channel that had some water damage. I conserved the book, and I was planning on wet cleaning the cover with a full submersion bath, and I did an alternate wet clean on it. because it had previous water damage. So if you're interested, go check that series out. And there are ways to still work around these pages and improve them. But
well, I've got that Ghost Rider 2 that I did, which I completely removed.
Right.
The water stains in a totally different method, and I actually got
that was Bronze Age too.
Yeah, it was a Bronze Age, and it got a universal grade on it.
Yeah,
and
great outcome.
I looked at it today. It's got 28,000 views.
Oh yeah, yeah. That video went viral for good reason.
Yeah,
yeah,
it was crazy.
So I thought I saw one more comment. Maybe we should talk about. Nicholas says, "I've been destroying Golden Age for months, but learning a lot."
You don't learn by not,
it's Sad Sack and Little Lulu.
Okay, Hugo Danner. He's got
Mike.
Yeah, he's got interesting that paper quality differs so much between Golden Age and Silver Age and Bronze Age. Yes,
really
it does. Explain the tanning, browning inside of the covers. Okay, that's actually a good question. Why are these covers, you open them up, why are they brown inside? Well, the tannins just over time are transferring, I believe, from the wraps themselves into the cover. Because in fact, I just did a video, I just posted it, I think today. I have a cover off, and you can see right where the spine was attached, it's perfectly white. But the rest of the interior of the book is tan. And to the point of not even being really off-white, it's like tan. And you can see the ink impressions from the pages that have left impressions onto the inside of the cover. So this is my theory, that it's just transferring over time from the inner wraps to the interior of the cover.
I saw someone post a double cover. They posted a double cover, and they were curious, being like, why is the first cover interior look different than the second cover interior? And they were looking at it, not understanding it was because the second interior cover was in contact with the interior pages. The first cover was in contact with the second cover. Different paper quality. So like it made a difference, and the first one kind of.
Well, you think about it, over all these years, as it's aging, the papers are deteriorating. What happens when they deteriorate? This is good Dr. Paul question. They actually think of it as like plastic. It continuously off gases till it disintegrates. Paper's doing the same thing. It's just it's disintegrating and transferring its stuff right onto the next page.
So the main three chemicals in the pulp paper are cellulose, hemicellulose, and the lignin. All three of them, the cellulose is the main material, and it's polymerized into long chains, and those chains are being broken down over time by oxygenation. And this is one of the reasons why when you look at interior pages or the inside of a cover, it is darkest at the edge, and it gets lighter and lighter toward the center. And that's because the edge is getting the most exposure to oxygen. And that oxygenation process is accelerated by the presence of acid. The acid is mostly in the interior pulp paper. And that acid content is basically catalyzing the oxidation. And that's what's happening over time. One of the things that we can do is we can actually accelerate that process to a more stable place. And I've got some videos where I talk about this, but basically you have double bonded carbonyl groups where you have a carbon double bonded to an oxygen. And what you can do is more fully oxidize that so that it actually becomes an alcohol, and then buffer it. And so you actually stabilize the book by further oxidizing it. And then it can be preserved for, actually, if it's properly buffered, it can be preserved for hundreds of years after that. So that's what's happening chemically. And that's one of the reasons why the lignin and the acidity of pulp paper makes it an ephemeral material. That's why pulp paper is not intended to be around forever. And that's why we have to do the conservation process if we want to prolong the life of it.
Paul,
And I do think
acid hydrolysis, is that the name of like what's going on?
I thought that was the name of your heavy metal band when you were in your punk phase from undergrad.
But that's like what causes that when you open the book, this smell that we love,
right?
That the book gives off is
part of
acid hydrolysis.
Mm-hmm. So, and it is worse in Silver Age books than it is in Golden Age books. The Golden Age books have a slightly higher quality paper, and they do not brown and embrittle quite as readily or aggressively as the Silver Age paper.
I love hearing you talk about this because I've read and understand what you've just articulated, but I don't understand what you like. I can do the work in the books, but you're talking about this on a level just
nod your head.
Yeah.
And this is why I don't use chlor groups, chlorine, or any of those bleaches, because they actually introduce a whole bunch of extra carbonyl groups. And then you've got to further oxidize those to stabilize them. And that's why you'll never see me mixing anything having to do with chlorine bleach in any part of any process that I'm doing.
Terrible.
Chlor groups are very bad for paper long term, even if they brighten it up in the short term.
Yep.
I guess I haven't put everybody to sleep with chemistry yet, but maybe we should wrap up here anyway.
Yeah, we still got 18 people watching, so that's good.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have an exciting show next week. We already previewed one book from Captain Larry that we're going to be showing off next week, and I hope everybody has a great week. I hope you got all of the books you wanted to at the free comic book day and you made it out and maybe saw some old friends. I know I did when I made it out to the comic shop. That was nice. Everybody hopefully will check out the Facebook page if you're on Facebook. If you are a youngster, join Facebook just to get into our group. It's worth it. And I hope everybody has a great week, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Take care.
See ya.
I know.
Bye.